Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into a disaster that hits millions of homeowners every year. But honestly, it rarely gets the spotlight until it is way too late. We're breaking down the actual anatomy of a water emergency, and we're looking specifically at Reading, Ohio. We're going to set the stage for a high-stakes, highly scientific look at water damage restoration, pulling right from the playbooks of local pros like Water Damage Restoration Cincinnati. Look, this isn't just about grabbing a mop and a bucket. As you'll see, it's a fascinating, practically forensic operation. Okay, let's dive into this. Imagine it's 2 a.m. A pipe randomly bursts in your wall, or maybe a massive summer storm completely overwhelms your basement. The water's rising, your floors are getting ruined, and it just won't stop. This right here is minute zero of a water emergency. It's a completely terrifying reality for any homeowner, where literally every single second feels like an hour. You're just watching the physical integrity of your property literally wash away right before your eyes. So, in that moment of absolute panic, there is one crucial number you've got to remember. 60. That's 60 minutes. That is your critical emergency response window. Professionals like Water Damage Restoration Cincinnati know that if they can dispatch a crew and get to your property within one single hour of that frantic phone call, they can actually kick off the scientific rescue before any permanent, irreversible structural damage happens. A lightning-fast response stops the water dead in its tracks, so it doesn't spread to unaffected areas, it drastically cuts down the drying time, and ultimately, it significantly lowers the total cost of the whole restoration. All right, Section 1, Reading's unique water risks. Now, what's really interesting about these local factors is how they systematically attack a home's defenses. To understand why that 60-minute window is so absolutely critical, we really have to look at the environment itself. The unique geography and the older infrastructure of Reading and Hamilton County basically create a perfect storm for water disasters. First, you've got the Mill Creek watershed, which is super prone to spring flooding. Then, think about that heavy Hamilton County clay soil. When it gets saturated, it expands and puts massive hydrostatic pressure right against your basement walls. Add in those 1920s to 1960s limestone foundations in places like Golf Manor that literally act like giant sponges during freeze-thaw cycles. Throw in freezing Ohio winters that burst pipes, and those aging 1940 storm drains along Reading Road that just kind of give up during our modern heavy summer downpours. Honestly, Mother Nature really throws the whole kitchen sink at this region. But wait, right alongside that structural threat is an immediate biological one. The very second water enters your home, a totally different clock starts ticking. If your indoor humidity levels push past 60%, toxic mold growth is triggered in just 48 hours. 48 hours! That makes rapid extraction absolutely crucial, because at this point, it's not just about trying to save your drywall anymore. It's about stopping a microscopic biological invasion before it really takes hold in all those dark, damp spaces inside your walls. Moving on to Section 2, categorizing the contamination. So the crucial point is how professionals handle all this chaos. They use a highly structured, scientific approach to instantly assess the danger level of the water in your house. And it all revolves around this acronym, the IICRC. That stands for the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification. Yeah, I know, it sounds like a mouthful of industry jargon, but these strict protocols are exactly what demystify a flood. They take this wild, chaotic event and turn it into a predictable, scientific operation. In fact, insurance companies demand these exact standards before they'll approve a claim, simply because they define the absolute best practices for safety, structural drying, and classifying the water itself. Based on those exact standards, every single flood gets scientifically sorted into one of three buckets. Category 1 is clean water. Think a broken supply line. Minimal health risk there. Then we have Category 2, which is gray water. This involves moderate contamination, like if your washing machine overflows. But Category 3, that is black water. This includes raw sewage, river floodwater, or literally any water that has touched soil. It carries severe health risks. And here is the truly terrifying reality of it all. A simple Category 1 clean water leak can rapidly escalate into a dangerous Category 3 black water situation if it just sits there for too long. And this brilliantly illustrates the timeline of the whole ordeal. When you map out the life cycle of a water emergency, the contrast is super stark. We kick off with that critical 60-minute emergency response window to get the standing water out. By the 48-hour mark, the risk of toxic mold growth really kicks in if that moisture isn't locked down. And then, stretching out over the next 3 to 5 days, you have the standard structural drying timeline. It perfectly contrasts the crazy fast threat of mold with the slow, methodical, multi-day drying process that's required to actually save the bones of your house. Okay, Section 3, the three-step rescue protocol. Let's move to and see how this builds together. How exactly is that multi-day drying process executed? Well, professional restoration crews have a specific, unwavering action plan they deploy the second they arrive at a home in Reading. Step 1 is emergency water removal, getting that bulk standing water out immediately. Step 2 is structural drying and monitoring. This means bringing in targeted dehumidifiers and high-speed air movers and running them nonstop. And Step 3 is verification, where they perform final moisture testing to ensure the whole environment is back in equilibrium. I really want to emphasize this. This entire process is about carefully calculated evaporation and scientific measurement. It is a completely different ballgame from just soaking up a basement puddle with some old towels. And to actually execute those steps, these crews roll in with an absolute arsenal of high-tech gear. We're talking truck-mounted extraction units capable of pulling thousands of gallons of water an hour. But the forensic-level technology is what's truly fascinating here. They use thermal imaging cameras and penetrating moisture meters to physically hunt down hidden moisture, stuff that's trapped behind 1950s drywall or way deep beneath your hardwood floorboards. They'll also deploy EPA-registered antimicrobials and HEPA air scrubbers to clean the environment. All this tech, it completely removes the guesswork. There's no hoping it's dry. They know it's dry for sure. Now, it's absolutely critical here that we distinguish between two terms that get confused in this industry all the time. Water mitigation refers to the immediate emergency actions. That's the extraction, the initial drying, the containment. Mitigation stops further loss. Water restoration, on the other hand, is what happens next. That's the rebuilding, the repairing, and returning your home to exactly how it was before the damage. To put it super simply, mitigation stops the bleeding while restoration heals the wound. You really need both for a full recovery. Which brings us to Section 4, handling the insurance claim. So once the physical chaos of the flood is mitigated, homeowners are usually hit with this massive wave of financial and administrative anxiety. Navigating the insurance aftermath is stressful, right? But this is exactly where all that science pays off financially. Meticulous scientific documentation bridges the gap between the disaster you just lived through and the insurance adjuster sitting at a desk. The pros provide all the crucial evidence: initial moisture levels, daily progress readings, exact equipment logs, before and after photos, incredibly detailed moisture maps, and psychrometric logs that track temperature and humidity. Having this undeniable scientific proof that the home was properly dried to those strict IICRC standards is literally what secures the homeowner's claim and gets the whole restoration paid for. Because water damage isn't just a mess, it's a deeply complex, incredibly time-sensitive emergency. So what does this all mean for us? I'm going to leave you with this thought. When that 48-hour clock starts ticking in your own home and the very real threat of toxic mold and structural collapse is looming right over you, are you going to rely on panic, or are you going to rely on a proven scientific rescue? Understanding the heavy science behind water mitigation just highlights the immense value of fast, certified professional expertise. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And remember, when water strikes, the clock is always ticking.